Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. This is it. I don't know if my heart can handle it. Guys, I got a feeling, and I think a lot of people out there are with me on this one. Tony Ferguson is going to get destroyed. Man, if you were a fight fan, this card, UFC 291, it's Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier, a heartbreaking fight. And Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green, another heartbreaking fight. Like, this card has these fights on there where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe we're getting this as fight fans. But also, when someone inevitably loses this fight, it like just crushes you. It's like, well, there goes years of just being a fan of these people. Flushed down the toilet, not flushed down the toilet, but, you know, destroyed. Like, they're done. They're done. These are career-ending matchups that we got. And maybe none more than this Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green matchup. It is on here, and it's particularly on for Tony. Guys, I've seen the conversation out there where it's talking about how Tony Ferguson, he's back at 155, and last time he was at 155, he looked good against Michael Chandler until he had facial surgery given by Michael Chandler's foot. But, I mean, we're talking about Tony Ferguson now in 2023, current year Tony Ferguson. Like, this is a 0-5 fighter. And yeah, he had a good 5 minutes somewhere in that stretch. Does that make me believe that Tony still got this? I mean, I'm gonna annoy a lot of people here, but Tony lost to Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is a fun guy. His team is fun to watch. It's awesome when the Diaz brothers are making fighter content for all of us to enjoy. But Nate Diaz is not a competitive MMA fighter anymore, especially when Tony fought him. When you go back and watch that fight, I'll give it a bit of an excuse for a man that I love, Tony Ferguson. That fight turned into almost like a showboating exhibition, like we're both two almost done in the UFC fighters, let's just have a good time. Sort of like an Adesanya versus Anderson Silva type of fight. And Tony, he got latched up by that guillotine, but that guillotine, like, Diaz was planning that guillotine his entire camp because he wanted to use it against Chimaev. So I'll give Tony some credit there, but still, man, like, not only did you make it really competitive with Diaz, you lost to Diaz, which is not a good look in modern MMA. And then there's Bobby Green on the other side of it, guys. Like, Bobby Green coming off of his last fight, a no contest fight, which he was pissed off about. Like, you're gonna have an angry Bobby Green coming into this fight against a decrepit, old, retirement Tony Ferguson. And that makes me feel like Tony Ferguson is going to have the life beaten out of him by angry Bobby Green. And when Bobby Green gets moving and he gets flowing and styling, he starts touching people up and hurting people. And if Tony Ferguson is a little bit slower and gets into the man dance with Bobby Green and allows for that flow and that style to happen, I mean, that's what's going to make this fight so fun as a fight fan to watch, right? These two guys like to get flowy with their striking and like to dance around their partner and actually start to exchange and pitter-patter and land elbows and hooks and see what they can do. And I think Tony Ferguson's going to welcome that kind of fight. He's going to want that kind of fight because that's the kind of fight that Tony Ferguson loves to have. And Bobby Green is just faster, stronger, better than Tony Ferguson right now at this stage of the career. It's crazy to be saying this about interim champion left people looking like just victims of a knife attack. Tony Ferguson, that's the man we're talking about, but that man is gone, and now we've just got this ghost, this shell of Tony Ferguson walking around, and he's going to get beaten up by Bobby Green if he thinks he's the man that he was 3 years ago, and it's going to break me inside to watch this. It's going to hurt, guys. But tell me what you think about this, guys. The fight is going to be happening at altitude, and if there's one thing that Tony Ferguson can hold on to, it might not be his chin and his strength, but you can hold on to your cardio a little bit longer. If you stay fit and active, you can hold on to your cardio. And Tony Ferguson, he has got the heart and the spirit of a lion, so he might get touched up in that first round, but then after that, if Bobby Green isn't ready for what's going to happen at altitude, Bobby Green could start losing the pace, start losing the sort of sting of the punches. And is there a chance, guys, that we could see Tony Ferguson fight his way back into this fight in rounds 2 and 3 and give us a victory, is the way that this fight is going to go, is round 1 to Bobby Green, the first minute and a bit of round 2 to Bobby Green. And then Ferguson has this cardio in him and he just starts hurting and damaging Green just a little bit more. And then round 5 is clearly a Tony Ferguson round. And then you have got a split decision down to the judges. And we wait. And we all wait to see, did the judges read the rules this week? Damage-based scoring. Who's bleeding more? Who's bruised more? Tony Ferguson has more scar tissue. Is he going to be cut open and bleeding? Is he going to land an elbow on Bobby Green and there's going to be blood all over Green's eyebrows? Like, it's going to come down to the judges' scorecards and it's going to be a triumphant return and we are all going to feel just crazy that Tony Ferguson pulled this out of the bag. Or is it going to be head down, arms down, win to Bobby Green? Bobby Green's back in the picture. Tony Ferguson is 6-0, can't hold it in any weight class. And this is it. We start to see the gloves come off. And then we go up the fight card to the rest of the fights and we've already lost a legend. I don't know how this one is going to go, guys, but I got a feeling that we're going to see the end of Tony Ferguson. And is Tony one of those kind of fighters where it's going to take his team, the coaches, the MMA media, us, the shit talkers online? Like, what is it going to take to convince Tony Ferguson that, hey, mate, maybe this is retirement time? Like, could he even book another fight after this? It is such a awesome week to be a fight fan this week, but it's going to hurt so much at the end of this week when we see what happens. Guys, let me know down in the comments, who do you have for Green versus Ferguson? I've got Green. My brain has Green. My heart has Tony. My nerves aren't ready. You let me know down in the comments, what do you think is going to happen? If you're enjoying these videos, maybe consider subscribing, and I will see you all in the next one.